Hi from hikersreview.com, and today we're going to answer a couple questions about our recent trip to Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa. The first question that we received was, are there any tips or advice that we'd give to prepare for the trip and for during the trip? And a couple things that I would point out and advise people that are going to be making the trip would be to test your equipment, especially your cold weather equipment. Make sure you have gloves that are warm enough. A lot of people on the summit night were stopping due to cold hands. It wouldn't hurt to bring a bunch of extra $1 bills while you're at the hotel and you're buying beer and interacting with the staff. It wouldn't hurt to give them $1. It goes a long way for them in Tanzania. As well as don't stress. A lot of times going up on a big trip, you're worried about things, but overall Tanzania is a fairly safe place, and whenever you leave the hotel, you'll more than likely be with a guide who will show you around and make sure that you get back to the hotel safely. What advice do you have?
So from my experience and my perspective, I would say plan the trip far in advance to give you enough time to physically prepare yourself. So that means getting a gym workout in there, or getting yourself exposed to different terrain if you're not an avid hiker or a day hiker, just basically. So get yourself exposed to that. We had 30 days for physical training.
A little short.
It worked, but I don't recommend that for anybody else, especially if you're pretty new to hiking and just getting out there. And mentally prepared. Being mentally prepared is one of those things. You are doing many hours of hiking. They don't tell you defined mileage of how many miles you're going to be hiking. They're going to tell you by how many hours you're going to be hiking. It could be 3 hours, it could be 7 hours. Just be mentally prepared for that, because there's no gauging of when you'll get from point A to point B.
Our next question that we received was, what do you pack? And on the website I put a long list of different items, and of course for every individual person it'll be a little different. But in that list I also added places where you could purchase it from retailers that most people trust, REI, Amazon. And if you're trying to purchase stuff for the trip, I recommend trying to complete all your shopping, say 90 days prior, 60 days prior, so that way if you have to go and return items, or you find out that you're missing something, something doesn't arrive in time, you don't end up getting yourself into a pinch. But I did pack an extra heavy fleece, and that heavy fleece sat in my backpack for the entire summit night. I never had to put it back on. Some people, they do get cold easier. I was happy that I had it. Unfortunately, it sat in my pack the whole time. Things that I packed that I didn't use, I brought a couple extra pairs of socks that I didn't need. When you're hiking slow, my feet didn't sweat as much, they didn't get as dirty, so they sat in my backpack. The porters got to carry it, but they're just a couple pairs of socks, not a big deal. The one thing that I do wish that I brought more of was M&Ms, whether that was for the porters or for myself for energy. It is a nice treat.
For me, I've narrowed it down to 4 key items that I would highly recommend to bring with. Hand warmers. We brought the oxygen required hand warmers, the typical winter ones that we have here in the States. You're going to want something that's different. Those do not work very well. They did not stay active because we did not get enough oxygen to keep them warm. So find a good alternative for that. The other thing, mittens. I brought gloves instead of mittens. Mittens keep your hands a lot warmer than gloves. So mittens are highly recommended. My fingers froze, but they helped. I got a pair of mittens from our porters, so that helped. And neck buffs. Never used a neck buff before, but they helped block the wind from my face, especially around the ears. You may not wear a hat all day, but you'll have your neck buff to keep just the dust or the wind from hitting your ear to give you earache. And a windbreaker, or like a breathable rain jacket. You're going to experience a lot of wind, so having that quick layer of zipping on and off a jacket is really great, because it's not heavy and it's not too warm, and it does just break the wind, so that way you're not freezing or just bone chilled because of the higher altitude and the lovely clouds that rolled in.
Just to touch on the buff, I was kind of skeptical about whether or not it was something that I was going to use. But when you're at that higher elevation, the air is dry, it's cold, and just something to add a little bit of barrier, a little extra warmth without having to put on a stocking cap or say, a full mask that's going to get you real hot. It provides that kind of medium warmth that you're looking for, and I'm kind of sold. It might be something that I find myself hiking with more and more often just because they are comfortable and flexible, and if you look around you can find some with pretty cool designs.
Yeah, and for women, great headbands if you can't pull your hair back.
The next question that we received was, were there any concerns? And to start that one off, I think my biggest concern was just traveling. I spent a lot of time in the U.S. I've made it down to Costa Rica, but flying to Tanzania that's a long trip. Flying there was 16 hours of travel time. Flying back was 20 hours. You're going through Amsterdam, and how is that going to affect you? Or are you going to have trouble with languages? And really, it was easy. There's nothing to worry about traveling internationally. Security there is the same as it is in the U.S., so you're going to stand in line, do the whole scan. So don't worry about that. And then the other concern that I had was safety in town. And I didn't know how that would work, whether I was going to be able to go out to the shops and explore Africa. And whenever you left the hotel, at least with Czar Tours, they had a guide that would go with you. It didn't cost anything. Sure, it's nice to tip. Again, that's why you bring maybe a couple extra $1 bills with to tip those guys for bringing you out and showing you around town. And, we did do a trip where we went and saw a waterfall and had coffee with the locals. And I wish that if I do it again, I would be more comfortable. Because I kind of felt like I was on edge. I'm in a place that's not familiar to me, with a bunch of people that I don't know. And you're always kind of concerned with Hollywood showing you all this horrible things that happen in third world countries. Tanzania overall was safe. The guides took care of you. So all of my concerns really ended up being non-concerns, and I wish I could do it again so I didn't have to worry.
Fair call out.
Yeah.
For me, it was mainly altitude, knowing that we live in Minnesota. It's flat. We have no exposure to high altitude at all. So going up is always a nerve-wracking thing for me, even just on normal hikes. I hate up. But it's the biggest fear of the altitude thing was honestly not knowing the warning signs of how I would be exposed to altitude sickness. Knowing that I've never been exposed to anything higher than 8,000 feet at most, and knowing that headaches are kind of normal if you dehydrate yourself, but at that altitude, do you consider that a sign? So it's those little things, those normal bodily things that you don't think of, but you know that altitude is your biggest concern. So how do you deal with that? But taking it slow, taking your Diamox that you get from your doctor, and
Diamox.
Yeah, and just talking to your guide, readily telling them how you're feeling helps alleviate some of those concerns.
Yeah, and for anyone who's never taken Diamox before, the major side effect is your limbs are going to feel like they've fallen asleep, and so your toes might tingle, your foot might tingle. For me, I actually woke up in the middle of the night because my toes or my heel were tingling. Once or twice I felt it in my hands, but otherwise it mainly stayed in my feet. I know for a group it was all over, different body parts for different people. And so don't worry about Diamox. It's, just kind of relax and the tingling sensation will go away. Our next question is, how many days did it take, and was it all uphill? Well, you are climbing a mountain, so of course it's going to be uphill. It did take us 8 days, and to kind of break that down into whether or not it was all uphill, we did have a day where we went to Lava Tower where it was 15.5 roughly for the elevation, and so you went up, and then coming back down it was, maybe another hour of down before reaching your camp. And I mean, in general, there were some up and downs, and then on summit day, you climb roughly 4,000 feet. Straight up takes about 6 hours, and then you come down for 2 to 3 hours, depending on how fast you can go down. Just go as fast as you want, just as long as it's safe. And get a couple hours of sleep, and then it's down for another anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, depending on which camp you guys set up as your final camp. And summit day is a very long day. So, what to train to tackle the high elevation and the physical requirements to complete Kilimanjaro. You want to start with that one?
Sure. So from that question, I would say you don't have to be physically fit to climb Kilimanjaro. The thing is just get yourself comfortable with hiking long hours. If you're not used to that, get out there, get yourself on a treadmill or get yourself out on the trails. Just hike for as long as you can. Keep in mind, bring your water and your snacks with you so that way you're not truly starving yourself when you're out on the trail. But just to get physically comfortable with those long days, if you're not physically feeling adequately fit. I don't know. We're not fit for sure,
No.
but
No, I've been more physically fit in my life. There's no denying that. But, we are used to hiking long days, getting up early, eating breakfast, and hiking until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and putting in 16 miles. So in general, I feel that just because we are so used to those long, hard, very physical days, carrying a 40-pound pack or more, that carrying a day pack and hiking very slow for a couple hours, covering a fraction of the miles, made a big difference. The next question is, were there any unforeseen surprises? And truth be told, there weren't too many. I know that we watched a lot of videos and did a lot of research before we went. But they tell you to bring hand warmers, but what they don't tell you is most hand warmers that you get here in the States, they require oxygen to produce heat. And so at about 16,000 feet, they stopped working. And so that was really the major one for me. And there are hand warmers out there that don't require oxygen, and that might be something to look into.
Yep, I would agree with that. Hand warmers are important, but find ones that will actually work at the higher altitude. For me, going on the journey, the one thing that I was surprised with was the higher you got up, the further your water sources were. So we learned that at base camp, the night before summit, our water came from the previous campsite, which was 4 hours away. But they said, continue to drink your 2 to 3 liters of water. Don't worry, we'll have water for you. It's just 4 hours away. Okay, so contradiction there, and it's like, well, do you continue to drink your 2 or 3 liters, or do you learn to conserve that? But drink it. Don't worry about it. They'll get you what you need for water, and if you require more than 2 to 3 liters, they'll get that for you too. And another thing that was surprising were the temperature changes. We were in our tent at base camp, and the clouds would roll in. It would become really cold. You'd have to snuggle yourself in your sleeping bag, and then all of a sudden, the clouds disappear and the sun is out. You're now stifling hot in your tent. No vents are opened, so just be cautious. Keep your vents open. You're going to get unpredictable weather out there, whether it's instantly cold or instantly hot. Just be prepared for it, and use your layers in your sleeping bag as appropriate.
The next question is, what was summit day like? And to sum it up, long. I think I wouldn't use the term hard, but I would say long at least for myself. Because from midnight to 1 o'clock, depending on your speed, you're going to start hiking. And so you maybe got 4 hours of sleep, depending on when your lunch was served and when you were able to actually fall asleep. And it's anywhere from 6 to 8 hours to the summit, depending, again, on how fast you hike and your ability to perform at higher elevations. Once you reach summit, it's 2 to 3 hours down to camp, and once you get to camp, you're going to be able to rest for maybe an hour or two. At least most guides provide that for you. At which point you wake up, you eat, you pack up, and then you hike another 5 hours down. And so from midnight to the time that you actually get to your next evening's camp has, 12 to 15 hours of hiking, and it will really tire you out, especially operating on little to no sleep.
I would agree. The day was long. There might have been a very short segment that I would have considered it to be difficult. And
between the last 2 points from Stella up to the summit?
There we go, exactly. So when you get up to Stella Point, that is not your peak. Your peak is another 30 minutes out.
Surprise, you can see it. And if it was, say, 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, you could probably do it in 15 minutes. But at 19,000 feet, it's going to take you close to an hour.
Yes. I can't even explain that. You'll have to experience it for yourself. Yeah. But it is the end result.
And my recommendation is you're going to get to Stella Point and you're going to feel like, you know what, screw it. I don't need to go to the next point. I got to the top. Well, you haven't made it to the top. Just push yourself and realize that you got all day to complete it. So take your time, one step after the other. It's not like you're dragging a boulder. It's just that there's lack of oxygen. So as long as you keep moving slowly and you've dressed warm enough, you'll get there. You'll definitely get there.
Just push forward. You'll be excited that you are.
Yep. The next question that we received was, what effects on our body did this trip have? And for me, I don't know, it definitely did a toll on my body, whether it was from the jet lag, which took me about a week to really readjust my body coming back. Going there wasn't much of an issue. The traveling, just sitting in a plane for 20 hours on the way back, or summiting, my body was sore for about a week, where I was just sleeping a lot and trying to recover. And really the side effects to the altitude for me was I had a slight headache, nothing that some Tylenol couldn't fix. And I experienced heartburn. And I'm not one who gets heartburn. I can eat almost anything and I'm not going to have an issue. But whether it was from the chlorinated water, whether it was the food, or whether it was the elevation, I got heartburn, and it was pretty bad, to the point where I was eating Pepto and Tums to fix it, and I didn't bring Tums. And so I had to talk to the rest of our group as well as the guide to get some, and that did help. So one thing is make sure you bring Tums, because you never know how that is going to affect your body being at 19,000 feet.
Yep. For me, I was exhausted. I think more of it was due to the altitude, the changes in elevation, basically. And there were times that we would eat dinner and I would just stare at the food. I wouldn't be hungry, but you know you have to eat, so eat. Even if it's just eating the bland rice and the bland pasta noodles that they're feeding you, get those carbs in there. You can try some of the sauces, but if they don't appeal, don't worry about it. Just eat those carbs. And if you've got extra snacks or energy bars, eat those too when you go back to your tent. So appetite was suppressed for me, but I forced myself to eat because you need those you need the calories and the carbs.
The next question that we received was, what would we change and would we do the trip again? And in general, if I would do the trip again, I would change it to maybe a 6 to 7 day trip versus 8. Just due to my backpacking experience doing longer, harder days, I feel that my body and my time would be best spent doing a little bit longer days, as well as shortening up the overall trip. And would I do it again? Yeah. But due to the cost involved with the trip, there's so many other places in the world that I'd like to go hike. South America, New Zealand, Australia. There's a lot of places that are still yet to be explored by me. And so even though I'd like to do it again, I think that my time and effort would be better spent maybe exploring other parts of the world.
Yeah, I would echo your response there. There are so many other places in the world to go. I would do the trip again, yes, but also select a different route that we could explore different sides of the mountain and shorten the duration up as well. I know that there were a couple days during our 8-day excursion that could have been a lot longer because we had only spent 3 hours on the trail and we had plenty of daylight left, so I would have encouraged the longer days just to get from point A to point B, and then that way you just have to go into your tent and eat and call it a day. So that's my take on that.
And then more of a general question as our last question is, is there any other information that you'd like to share to somebody who's going to be doing it, or tips, advice to make sure that somebody's well prepared?
So for the trip, be adventurous. Go. Don't worry too much about the cost of the trip. I know that's kind of a key thing is the financials and whatnot, but plan ahead. Give yourself a year and a half to get the trip on the books. Start saving up. Your down payments are not due until 6 months in or 90 days in, so you've got plenty of time to financially get yourself ready for it. And just don't be afraid of seeing the world. There's so much out there. Yeah, there's a lot of things that'll scare you, like long plane rides and different countries. Yeah. But find people that have some advice to give you and check out the videos. There's lots of videos out there.
Lots.
And there's a lot of people that will give you their advice, but take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. Learn from them, test it out, and then go from how you are comfortable with that advice or how your body takes to the training that they recommended. So, do it for yourself. Don't trust anybody's true opinion. Make that call for yourself. That's what I would say.
And some information that I feel would be valuable for somebody who's going over there is when you get there and you see some things, you're going to think, okay, it's all great, and but then when you're done with the trip, there's going to be so many things that you wish that you either brought with you or remembered. And so some of those things is, bring an extra bag of equipment to donate. And the thank you and the praises that we received, because we brought 2 extra backpacks that were basically brand new that we weren't going to use, extra jackets, extra clothing that we left there, was huge. So if I would do it again, I would really honestly bring a whole extra backpack full of equipment that I either picked up at garage sales, Craigslist, or REI used sales to bring to donate. Maybe include that in your tip. So if you bring $200 worth of equipment, maybe you tip a little bit less because you purchased all that equipment, because it's going to go a long way. Getting a pair of boots there is extremely difficult. And so some of the items that you might want to try to bring is maybe boots, backpacks, clothing, battery banks. Those things are expensive and hard to get there. Recording video, if you have a high frame rate 4K video, perfect. Most of your cell phones, which I realized on this trip, even though you record in 4K, you're recording at maybe 30 frames per second. And so your video will look choppy. So go with highest resolution, but with the highest frame rate. So at least 60 frames per second to get nice smooth video. And you're definitely going to want to ask for some good guides. And the guides that we used was Living. He was extremely caring, thoughtful, and made sure that everybody, even the slowest in our group, got to the summit. Whether it was support by carrying their backpacks or taking, half the group went faster, staying back behind to make sure that they were taken care of while they made it to the next camp or made it to the summit. So ask for Living. Living typically works with Thomas, Stevie, and Frank. And so that group of guys, very supportive, very helpful the entire way. So if you have any other questions, feel free to leave comments. I may not do a video answering those questions, but I'll definitely try to respond to it in a comment or even sending you a message back. And if it's anything that maybe a female should answer versus a man, my wife, the other half of Hiker's Review, would be more than happy to answer for you, and would be happy to assist any way we can. So from Hikers Review, thanks for watching, and again, like, comment, and do all that other wonderful YouTube stuff, and feel free to reach out to us if you have questions.